From November 1896 to May 1897, mysterious large airships, powered by propellers and decorated with electric lights, were reported flying through the night skies of California, Texas, the Midwest, and the Great Lakes region of the U.S. What started off as a few localized people reporting seeing large ships flying overhead eventually turned into a national craze, with newspapers all over America reporting eyewitness accounts of strange airships being spotted sailing across the country's skies.
Is it possible that in the time of Tartaria there was a public aerial transport system that made use of etheric technologies? Are many of these technologies left over and rediscovered after the mud flood? Are these zeppelins, dirigibles, hot air balloons remnants of a prior mode of transportation? And this is the history that they leave us with. Many depictions of hot air balloons, with ships, okay, Tartarian building, even flying shoes, being comical, mocking us, and again, all sorts of different designs for these hot air balloons, but they want to sell the story that these are the first time that they invented these weren't into the late 1700s. That the ancients didn't think of this technology, that it wasn't until the Montgolfier brothers, where I guess they started in paper making and then somehow got into flying machines. But what doesn't make sense about all this is that on the hot air balloons website itself, it says that hot air balloons were used to create the Nazca lines in Peru, and that was 1500 years ago. So if you think about it, and also, I mean, in China, 220 AD, and it was used for military purpose, so why would it take over 1,000 years for it to be used in Europe again? And I think that this is where the cover-up is happening, is that they're trying to act as if the ancients didn't possess this technology.
Let's keep digging. We see that the US Army had this technology in the 1800s, as well as the Navy.
In 1929, the US Navy begins building an enormous machine. And when it's finished, it'll be the size of 3 city blocks. Inside its vast hull, up to 100 men will live thousands of feet above the ground for up to a week at a time. It'll be the world's first flying aircraft carrier. Defended by machine guns and armed with multiple fighter aircraft, it was the brainchild of one of the greatest visionaries in naval aviation. And the United States had planned to build an entire fleet of them for a war it knew was coming.
We are convinced that this airship is by no means a vulnerable target.
Now, this is a photo from July of 1931, and we clearly have an airship charging at the top of this building. So we have a lot going on here, and this was within the last 100 years. An airship charging at the top of this tower. Did you think they only charged at the top of buildings? Of course not. They had charging docks in the middle of the water. Here we have a photo of the US Navy airship in 1924, charging from this boat. Now let's zoom in on this charging station to get a good look at what's going on here. Now this is a technology that we were never told about. This is hidden from our timeline, a clear proof that there is much more to the story than what we've been told, especially since this was not thousands of years ago, and shows how easily history can be rewritten. This technology should be common knowledge at this point. Here we have another angle in Rhode Island of the charging taking place. These airships were not powered by gas or simply helium. And if we switch angles here, we can actually see the charging tool that was used right at the top of this tower. They're clearly about to connect to the airship. So this, in my opinion, is clearly explaining what's going on at the top of these old world buildings. They were charging stations for the airships. They have the same features, and I guarantee you that they still turn on, since this was not that long ago.
What if in Tartaria, before the mud flood, they possessed these ancient flying machines, or this technology that goes way back, and this technology was re-engineered, redeveloped, and over time they developed these efficient flying machines known as dirigibles, that, and almost famously as the Zeppelin, that would dock. This is the Empire State Building that would dock and charge, or it would get moored by a mooring cable. This ancient technology used ether, atmospheric static electricity, and these stations would collect it. These ancient Tartarian buildings would collect this energy and recharge these flying machines. This must have been the very first goal of many ancient civilizations. If you can build intricate buildings that serve as ether collecting stations, then it's not far-reached to consider that they developed some sort of flying machine that ran on energy it collected. Even the Vedas speak of advanced flying machines of the past. Many ancient cartographic maps are extremely accurate even to this day. Is it possible, just as with the Nazca lines, that the ancients figured out how to create aerostats, or flying vehicles that can move slow enough in order to see and record land masses from a high altitude? 300 to 500 years ago, there was an advanced civilization that we don't learn about in history. Our entire timeline has been completely convoluted by our current controllers. We don't know exactly what happened to the civilization. Did they disappear after some sort of cataclysm? There seems to have been a comet involved somehow, and we've gone over some theories in other Tartaria Explained videos, but it's possible that there was a global aerial system that connected these civilizations, and this knowledge has been suppressed from history books. Old world cities such as New York, Paris, Belgium, Rome, and even San Francisco have similar buildings that could have served as docking and charging stations for dirigibles and other flying machines.
And then we have this map from the early 1800s showing a land that was to the east of Portugal, that was named Barbaria, that is no longer there. It was south of France, west of Italy. So where did this land go? Also, this map shows that Barbaria had islands. And are these points on the map ley lines? What an incredible map to look at. Obviously an event took place very recently, definitely proving that we've had land here that is no longer here. These maps are so detailed, yet these places are no longer here. And we have this group on the map who are most likely a depiction of the barbarians. Oh, and should I tie it back in with the airships? Can we just zoom in? Right above this disproportionate guy with the red and green on? What is above his head in the sky? That wouldn't be an airship, would it? You tell me. So we were given a photo with the airships in the background in the sky. So I went digging and found this photo from 1905, World's Fair in Oregon, showing more airships. This form of travel was all over the place. It wasn't just created in the 1800s, and the Hindenburg event was used as a scare tactic to make these airships look faulty, removing this free energy form of transportation technology out of our lives. Do you really think that they put a gas in these airships that would be so incredibly flammable and fly them over massive cities? Or does it make more sense that this Hindenburg event was a planned event to get rid of this free form of travel and wipe it from the history books? Here we have a photo of one of these airships sitting in between the two spires of the old world building. You can see that they use these spires to electrically charge these airships, and this was common knowledge. And in the very next photo, it's leaving the port. We are not given the truth about our history. This isn't something that we are ever told about in our mainstream schooling system all over the world. Do you find that odd?
We all know the story of the Hindenburg and how they said, oh, blimps are dangerous. So that one event literally destroyed that entire industry. These anti-gravity machines that weighed 500,000 pounds, they would be released from a mooring line, they didn't need power, and just through push, they could travel. A modern jet-powered system needs 5 times more fuel and weight. And that's just to compensate for it losing weight. The Hindenburg was much more efficient. 18 million miles of surface in 1 year, 1 year in operation before the disaster. It had 44 transatlantic flights that were successful. Supposedly this is just a test trial. Very fuel efficient, and if they would have kept developing these technologies, imagine what we would have now. A free aerial transport system maybe? The Hindenburg was also political. You see the Nazi sign on the tail, and it was named after a political leader, so there was kind of a symbolism to this destruction. There was many bomb threats, and the lead engineer of the Hindenburg said that it was sabotage. The Hindenburg had plans for using hydrogen instead of helium, which would have been much more cost effective. This could have been one of the main reasons it was taken down. They never show the part where it starts burning, you only see it afterwards once it's in flames. and they just so happen to have 22 different photographers right on set right when this is happening. Only 35 people were lost during this event, but yet, they say it's so dangerous. How many people die from airplanes and cars?
So, car crashes happen in the millions every year, many of them involving alcohol or cell phones. Yet nobody's rushing to ban cars or cell phones or beer. There is a semi-lengthy list of airship crashes listed on the Wikipedia, but it's still short enough to where you could examine every crash, whereas car crashes are in the billions. Same goes for boats. There are thousands of crashes each year, but there are multiple fatalities, and yet we still use them. This to me indicates that safety is not the true motive for banning this mode of transportation.
They just didn't want these technologies to compete with their industries, and they wanted to be the main fuel source of the future. Just think about how much money big oil makes nowadays. Even after their fake World War, which they funded oil to both sides, World War I made billions off of aircraft fuel, which was gasoline. In the modern day, you can imagine that billions of gallons of gasoline are being used. Not only that, plastics, pharmaceuticals, the modern oil industry is making trillions. This is why JP Morgan actively shut down Nikola Tesla. Free energy would mess up their debt system that they were trying to impose on every human being. Oil waste is extremely toxic. They just turn it into even more products that are used by every vehicle today, like tires and paint and all sorts of stuff. So what's the big idea here? What do we think's going on? Well, from what we've gathered, the old world was much more advanced than we were made to believe. Perhaps not in the way that we imagine high tech nowadays. In fact, it seems that we've lost more than we've gained. A world in which flying machines were commonplace and people could fly more freely does seem fantastical, but it's important to remember on whose authority is it simply fantasy.
And I'm going to take this time right now to answer a lot of people's question. Will we ever find the truth? As we keep uncovering more and more documented evidence, we're going to find that the previous civilization was not that far in the past, and our current structures hold so much more technology than we ever truly understood. So in my opinion, yes, we are going to find the truth about all of this. We are uncovering the truth faster and faster, and this community gets bigger and bigger, with more and more people sharing their thoughts and knowledge. The mainstream history is becoming comedy hour at this point. So we can clearly see that these buildings all around the world may have had a second purpose, but they were without a doubt here to generate free energy, specifically for airships. And once you realize this, then we can go deeper and ask the question, was the previous civilization capable of using these buildings to power their flight that were so much more powerful, so much faster, and so much more incredible than an airship? I believe that they fully understood this technology. They were the ones that constructed it. They had this technology and were able to travel through the air so much faster than we can today while using the Earth's natural energy. These buildings are technology. They are able to extract the energy and are able to turn it into a fuel. If you're looking for a why, a motive to suppress this technology, well, it would 100% benefit a civilization, us. It's free. There is zero benefit to free transportation, free energy. Do we need to go further for the why? So when you go around your town now and see the top of these buildings, we can all understand how popular this form of transportation really was. It was everywhere. Now we have talked about Tartaria. We have shown in this episode in the beginning how there are possibly more countries and more land, such as Caucasia. So we have Tartaria, but we also have Barbaria, where you would get the term barbarians. And of course, again, have any of us heard of a place called Barbaria in history class? Maybe you have now, but in mainstream history, this is not something that is taught to us. We're not being told the truth about any of this. And we have many maps of a land called Barbaria. And I believe that these maps are from the previous civilization. They are not presented to us in the mainstream history. So it's our job to go find them in places that are not easily accessible. And in order to find something, you have to know what you're looking for. Thankfully, we do.